Good morning. It's Brian Irvin. I'm here just after our last PLASN meeting. So PLASN is the Pan London Autism Schools Network research meeting. And I'm here with the wonderful and lovely Oli, who gave his presentation on transdiagnostic support within the schools. Oli, first of all, can you tell us who you are? What's your context? Where have you come from? What brought you here?
Yeah, so I work for the National Autistic Society at one of their schools in London. My background is I did my bachelor's in psychology up in Manchester, and then after COVID and losing my job in travel and tourism, I went to your colleagues over at the Institute of Child Health and did my master's in paediatric neuropsychology.
Nice.
And then found my way into autistic schools. And my role at the moment is I sit within the psychology team, right in the heart of our transdisciplinary team.
So could you give us a quick definition of what a transdisciplinary team is, and then a few reflections on how it seems to work?
Yeah, of course. So a transdisciplinary team is where you got all the disciplines within our setting as a school. So that's everyone from right at the start, and at the heart of everything is our students, their families, their teachers, their teaching learning assistants, but also psychology, occupational therapy, designated safeguarding leads, speech and language therapy, the whole team. But in that, we're not just coming from our own silos. The occupational therapists don't just talk about fine motor skills and sensory processing. Actually, we all talk about everything, and we all share our knowledge and our perspectives because we've all received different training and we all have different views on how things might work.
I think right to say that's a fairly privileged setting where you're at.
Very, and that was one of the big things, reflecting on having spoken to everyone today, we're really lucky and we have that. We're very mindful that that's not the standard.
It does a different place. It puts you as a trailblazer, a pioneer going and doing things in a different way. And hopefully by sharing some of these good practice, we can make sure that other schools can follow your footsteps.
Massively. And I think one of my hopes is to kind of inspire the researchers at PLASN to really look at it and go, if this system is what works, it's great. Actually, to prove that to government is to show them, to have that active research and to go, here's a case study and here's actually, what will we benefit.
The data that will tell a story that will help policymakers find their own way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the missing link.
So you mentioned there PLASN and the network we have here. What use has it been for you and your team to be exposed to some of the research that goes on here?
So I think it's twofold, right? There's two sides of this. One is the confirmation that the way we're doing things is the way we should be progressing, and that actually we're onto something. But also the other side is the interest in the learning of the new and how to integrate those skills. In my talk, I spoke about certain studies that we've been presented, the interconnection of efforts for control, sensory motor skills and language skills, actually building those together within a classroom in an ecologically valid environment rather than in a one-to-one tuition. Actually that's the heart of it. And if you can embed that in a classroom, you're more likely to generalize that to your adult services when you get there, or to home with your family, or to the local social club, whatever you do at the weekend.
Last curveball question before we wrap everything up. You listened today to Dr. Mel Romaldes talking about the transitions to work, to Dr. Joe Saul talking about language acquisition, particularly around echolalia and the potential groupings you can think about, language which is expressed versus language that it's received. And then Kat Rowland was talking about the whole measuring of anxiety and autism. What can you take from that back to your team? What's the things that are going through your head?
So I thought all three talks were fascinating. We have a particular passion for AAC anyway. We constantly talk about our transitions, and it was a real refreshment to recognize that practice and research are reflecting each other, and they're reflecting each other very closely. I think so. The key for employment for us, we have to recognize a lot of our students possibly aren't going to go into employment just because of the level of their need, but also actually, the opportunity there if we build the right connections and relationships with our communities. With regard to Joe's talk on the AAC, one of our occupational therapists has just started doing their masters in AAC.
Amazing.
So it's that opportunity then to actually link those two people together and actually see how can we specify, it's not very often. I reflect back on, I think it's Sarah Donnell presented a while ago, of, the children, young people we work with at our school are not very well represented in research historically. And actually hearing an entire PhD project solely funded on the fact that it is for autistic people who are minimally verbal is massive. And, from the psychology aspect at our school, anxiety is it's a big buzzword. We all now kind of know what it is, but for Kat to be discovering and understanding is there a measure that will identify if someone is clinically likely to have anxiety? That's massive, because for us to access CAM services, it's really hard to prove someone who doesn't use a voice is working at an interactive level that is significantly below what you would expect, to the point where there's no way of measuring it. If CAM come up with a measure, we can refer to CAMS LD and
Burden
go,
of
please
truth.
help.
It's just one of those things that it sometimes gets me a little bit cross, because great practitioners, if they have a hunch, their hunch is most likely to be in the right sort of ballpark. Sometimes needing to find a measure just to get funding, it makes me grind my teeth at night.
It's a barrier we face a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
And that's not just for mental health, that's for dietetics, that's for, any of our physiotherapy team.
Clearly, the economics of healthcare.
Massively. And, you only get that cohesion through being transdisciplinary. Health economics wasn't a thing 20 years ago. We didn't really think of it in that way. But actually, we've always known that prevention is better than cure in terms of medicine. So then why don't we think of that in education? Why are we not just talking about teaching people the skills to access a world that meets them? And from our point as the National Autistic Society, the other side of that is building a world for autistic people that they can work in and that they can access.
And I think that is just the best way to say thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thank you ever so much, Oli.
Thank you,
Have
Brian.
yourself
It's been a
a good one.
pleasure.
Take care.